Indicating in the past, new findings and current issues in the people in the Pacific and Southeast Asia that brings together linguists, archaeologists, and geneticists to discuss debates about the people in the Pacific and Southeast Asia. And you're all warmly invited to that. There's some posters around. There's an email address here for registration. Get in soon. We're taking people on a first served basis. Unfortunately, the rooms there are quite small, and so the most we can take is 55 people. So if you're interested in that, please come along. To finish off, I want to talk a bit about fieldwork and the importance of fieldwork in Venuatu. As I mentioned, Venuatu, perhaps 105 languages, and that diversification has taken place in about 3,000 years. There were no people in Venuatu more than 3,000 years ago. I like to call it the Galapagos of language evolution, because you had this explosion of languages there, all Austronesian, but lots of differences. On one island, Malakula, there's 34 languages alone. And one of my plans is to use, to do a combination of fieldwork and various other kinds of projects in Venuatu as a kind of microcosm of how we might bring together interdisciplinary teams to answer questions about language diversification and human history. And there are a lot of problems that I think can be solved in Venuatu. A microcosm of kind of general issues. One of them is just how you can get such an explosion of languages in such a short space of time with relatively few people. The population's less than 250,000 people in Venuatu. Another mystery about Venuatu is why the people there don't look like, if it's all part of the Austronesian expansion, why they don't look particularly like Micronesians or Polynesians. Now, controversially, Bob Bluss has claimed that on the basis of some linguistic evidence and some cultural features, that what happened was that there was an initial Austronesian migration down into Venuatu, but very rapidly after that, non-Austronesians co-opted oceanic voyaging technology and got into Vanuatu and New Caledonia. And that explains things like the presence of serial verb constructions in Vanuatu, the repeated loss of decimal systems, the Austronesian decimal system in Vanuatu, and the large amount of sound change that seems to have gone place in New Caledonia. All those he sees as evidence of extended kind of contact. Now, that's a bold hypothesis. Bob, I think, would admit that none of this linguistic evidence or some of the cultural features that he points to are compelling. But it's one that can be tested with genetics, and one that should be tested with genetics, because it makes strong predictions about the nature and the timing of potential admixture events. I want to have time for questions, so I'm just going to, skip over that evidence, and some of the cultural evidence he points to, and say that I'm keen on fostering fieldwork there in Venuatu. Starting with the island of, this is Ben Atkinson and I were the chief in the Leokau region in Tana, which recently was devastated by a cyclone in Venuatu. I think initially I'm going to be focusing the fieldwork in the island of Malakula. And the aim of the fieldwork is to deploy interdisciplinary teams. So I think Stephen Levinson asked today, what about sociolinguistics? Shouldn't we be integrating our understanding of micro-level variation into an understanding of how that produces macro patterns? I totally agree. I think one of the places that might be really tractable is in Vanuatu. So the plans there involve teams of sociolinguists, historical linguists, anthropologists, and one of the things I want to do is to use technology to assist with language documentation. Stephen Levinson and I have been talking about this for ages, but to use mobile devices with apps to kind of niche source, if you like, language documentation via the school children, to get them actively involved in their own language documentation. So that's going to be a long-term project which attempts to answer some sort of fundamental questions about the drivers of language diversification, all the way up from studies of fine-scale variation to the larger-scale patterns that it might produce. So